Welcome to the Tales from the Pros podcast by Imagine Ovation. In the world of tech and business, it's easy to get caught up in the tools, tactics, and chasing revenue. But behind every breakthrough, there's always a deeper story, driven by people building with purpose and meaning. This show is for the founders, business leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs doing the hard work, navigating challenges, leading through change, and building things that matter. We're here to bridge the gap between technology and people through honest, raw storytelling in the world of innovation and without all the BS. Tales from the Pros. Real conversations, real growth. Hey everyone, welcome back to Tales from the Pros. I'm your host, Michael Georgiou, joined by my co-host, Eric Lawrence. Today's guest is someone who's doing exactly that in the world of physical therapy and healthcare. We're excited to be joined by Andrew Cherry, the Chief Operating Officer at Movement for Life, a leading organization that is redefining how patient care is delivered at scale. Andrew has spent years inside a rapidly growing organization, navigating the complexities of healthcare operations and patient experience. But what really stands out is how he and his team have leaned into innovation, not just through tech, but through bold leadership decisions that drastically improved patient access and reshaped the business model. Whether you're a healthcare leader, a COO, or someone navigating change in a legacy industry, this episode will give you a front row seat to what innovation looks like behind the scenes. So let's dive in. Andrew, thanks for being here, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, we're excited to get into this. And I think just based on your experience, man, and knowing you kind of personally and working together, I think the audience can really learn from you and just what you can kind of offer. So we'll kind of dive in. And Eric, I didn't forget about you, man. Thanks for being here too.
Yeah, good to be here. I think a good kickoff point, Andrew, is if you want to let us know a little bit about your background and the company's background, that's a good jumping off point.
Sure. I guess just to start with me, I've been with Movement for Life for a little over 10 years. Before that, I spent a majority of my career in the public education space, doing everything from literally being a teacher to working in school administrative stuff, finishing my career working a lot in the tech side of schools, school information systems and things like that, where I kind of got into the tech side of things in that area. And before I moved over to Movement for Life, which is an employee-owned company. I'm really proud to be an employee-owned company. It started in 1999 with one clinic in San Luis Obispo, California, and we've grown to 27 locations in 4 states now: California, Arizona, North Carolina, and Virginia. Almost 400 employees, and so really proud to be in the space. One of the bigger practices that's not private equity owned or been bought out at some point from somebody else at some point, and we're very proud to be that way. And again, I can't stress enough how we're proud to be an employee-owned company. It just really speaks to what our culture is. I'm happy to be part of the leadership team that gets to lead that as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the nearest clinic to us where we are in Raleigh, North Carolina is Asheville, if that's right.
Correct, Asheville. In fact, we just opened up another location out in Asheville. What was that? About right at the end of June. So that's definitely it's actually one of our fastest growing regions for us.
That's cool.
Amazing.
I'm sure you're gonna open up a lot more locations as well.
Yeah. We like to be on a trend of about 2 to 3 locations a year. If we have the people trained and ready to open those clinics up, like probably a lot of businesses, COVID threw us a curveball a few years back, but we, I think at this point, are kind of fully recovered, if you will, from that and kind of back to speed.
Awesome.
Oh, nice.
It's interesting. I know that you have a tech background, Andrew. The space in general, I know Movement for Life may have not been traditionally a technology-focused company. So I'm interested to know from you if you can share a specific moment or challenge at Movement for Life that made you realize strategic innovation was non-negotiable for you.
Yeah, and let me start by saying I always make the joke when I was in the school system and I left, I remember saying to myself, I got to find some industry that's not as far behind in tech as the school system. And somehow I landed in the one that was, which brings a lot of opportunity at the same time. But there was certainly some times that really kind of stood out. What's interesting is I wouldn't say there was necessarily a specific time, though I can tell you a specific time we made a decision about it, but there was really a lot of things that kind of came in you know, really from COVID, I think was a huge one. I mean, COVID just sort of thrust telehealth into our industry. It was sort of being discussed and toyed with, but it really threw it to the forefront. But then, you can throw telehealth in, but as you might imagine, a lot of people do. How do you do physical therapy in telehealth? It's not like you just talk to somebody, ask a few symptoms, and write a prescription. There's follow up. There's exercise. There's all kinds of things you have to do. So as we were kind of coming out of COVID, and we were really looking at ways to drive revenue from different streams and reduce some of our costs, really. How do we implement telehealth? There were so many questions that were kind of floating around. And probably the big thing we were looking at was remote therapy monitoring at the time, because it was really kind of new in our particular industry as well. And so we started looking at several different solutions that were out there, and kind of realized, we had a product for a while back, and it was really a much smaller version of what we've got now. And we said, we got a lot of what it takes to do this. Maybe it's time for us to lead this charge instead of just trying to shop for a product. And maybe we can do something that's really, really unique. And so it was, again, a kind of a combination of needing remote therapy monitoring options for revenue streams, what COVID did with telehealth. And the other big piece was just, PT recruitment. Finding physical therapists in our industry is probably the number one problem of almost any physical therapy related group. There's
Wow.
simply not enough.
That's crazy.
And they're
Yeah.
leaving the industry from burnout. And so, how do you keep access for people? How do you get them into your clinic? How do you treat them without having to wait too long? And lastly, the one other piece that is not probably the forefront of every clinic's mind, but was of ours, which was just access to human beings as a whole. There are too many people that suffer from MSK, that's musculoskeletal. If you're not in that industry, MSK issues that can't get help for a variety of reasons. They don't have the insurance, they don't have the ability, whatever the case may be. And so this all kind of came to this culmination right as we were exiting kind of COVID. And that's when we decided, you know what? And we kind of joked around and said we're going to be PT vigilantes, and decided we need to kind of take matters into our own hands.
Yeah. I love it.
Decided, you know what? Let's solve all, or at least as many of these problems as we can on our own. Because we were fortunate enough to be in a position to do so.
Yeah. That's cool. Kind of, yeah, you really took the initiative to just kind of go ahead and do it, and not just wait and not rely on others, and kind of other tools and stuff, because there's so many tools out there, and it's difficult to really have control over it, right? If it's not your own, kind of property, your own IP, at least in the software world, it's very difficult to really be able to scale it and to allow it to make the impact that you want to make as an organization, internally and externally.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with, I don't think we're unique. There's so much tech out there, and they come in and they maybe solve one problem, but
Mhm.
then you have to solve five. And so they may solve one problem here, but then now you have this new problem of how do you get all your people to work with five different systems that may not work together,
Yeah.
may not function correctly. And so now you may have solved a problem, but you created three more, right? And so I think that was another huge aspect of it as well, is, technology has been coming into this industry pretty fast. I think it was because there was a bit of a vacuum in it. And like I said earlier, when I came here, I was like, wow, there's not much here. But it's really kind of come in fast. But that also creates disjointed systems, sometimes. And that's not a critique of any one. It's just a reality of, there are a lot of different, systems out there. And for a physical therapist specifically, their focus is the patient. They're not sitting on a computer with three big screens where they can have three different screens up and roaming through things. They need things to work better and more efficiently. And so that was a big hurdle that we were seeing as well.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I love the story of it. I mean, it's, Eric and I have talked about this in some previous episodes, just kind of about how some companies don't really have that self-awareness, where they want to make money and grow in revenue and scale. We all have that goal, obviously, as a company, but it's really like you had this intention, this motive to improve the overall experience for patients, right? And for the clinics as well. And that would be a kind of a byproduct of success for growing your company too, because if you're going to help them out and you're going to solve these challenges for them, then it's by default, it's going to help you. And I love that you guys did that. I think that's very powerful. Just kind of having that self-awareness, and really doing something about it, and just making like a positive impact, man. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think you touched a little bit on this before, but do you think there are any other like kind of big hurdles, Andrew, that drove innovation at EverFlex, and how did you really overcome them to keep the kind of the momentum going? Obviously, you know, you built EverFlex, right? And you did it for those certain reasons that you mentioned before. And for those who don't know, EverFlex is a product of kind of Movement for Life, at least now. But yeah, if you can talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, there were definitely some hurdles.
Yeah, I want to
And
hear them. Yeah,
I would say the biggest one, we were actually just recently talking about this, and we were talking about this in terms of our own clinics, not necessarily EverFlex specifically, but our own Movement for Life as a whole. And we often ask ourselves where we're at in a particular time. And there's a I can't remember if it's a book or what, but they talk about whether you're Apple, the Ritz Carlton, or Walmart, right? Like, are you an innovator? Do you deliver an amazing experience, or are you all about efficiency and value and cranking things out, right? And I think Movement for Life at its core, we're closer to the Ritz Carlton than anything else, which is, we want to provide a great experience that gets people better. And that we want to feel good. We really talk about atmosphere a lot, and the ability of our providers. But it was a switch, because to do this project, we had to become a little more Apple than we were probably comfortable with. And what I mean by that is, previously when it came to technology, we were the customer in the Ritz Carlton model, right? We were paying dollars, and had high expectations out of our vendors. And so we would, complain and leave it to them to fix all those problems that we were having. And this really flipped this on our head, our team a lot, because it was like, hey, we no longer could just complain about the solution. We had to come up with the solution, and we had to come up with a solution that met the needs of everybody. And that was I don't know if the right word is a culture shift, because it really wasn't a culture shift. It was just more of a mindset shift that we really had to kind of wrap our brains around, because a lot of times we'd be designing things, or, when our initial product went out there and we were testing it ourselves internally, people would say, well, I just don't like the way this works. And we're like, well, you're an employee owner. This is our product. You need to give me a solution, not just tell me it doesn't work, fix it.
hmm
That was interesting, because we're really trying to get our whole team, all 400 employees, because a lot of them touch it in some way, shape, or form, this product. you know we're we are Apple in this sense, defining our own fate. I don't and how this product goes. We can't just complain and expect someone else to come up with a solution. So that was a tough shift, I guess, because we just never been in that before. I think we're through that now. I mean, in fact, I would say we're on almost the other side of it now, because now we have just ideas coming out of the woodwork, and people have really bought into it, and I'll get videos. I was just thinking, Andrew, what if we did this, 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 and this? And, I'll get a video from somebody. Or I got one particular employee who's always thinking about EverFlex, and I'll get literally a phone message. I'm driving home from work and I just had these ideas, and he'll just list them off, right, about all this stuff. And so they've kind of put that innovator hat on, but at the same time, they are also having to work in the clinic, because we are a customer of our own product, right? And so they're working in the clinic and thinking about the patient side, because they're trying to deliver that Ritz-Carlton experience to our patients, and saying, how do we also make sure we kind of keep our culture ingrained and we don't just become a tech company? And that's always been really big on us as well. We When we first started working with Imagine Innovation, that was a big component of it. We did not want to be a tech company. We wanted to be a physical therapy company with tech. And we think that's really important in that sense. And so it's an interesting kind of balance, I guess, that we have. And our team's done a really good job of maintaining that. It's always our customers first. They've grown a lot to become innovators, but I'll call it innovators when it's appropriate, right? They take care of our customer, but then they bring the ideas, and when we help develop them, and bring them to life. So that was probably really the biggest hurdle. It was changing our culture in that way to develop a product. It seems small. It doesn't seem like it'd be that big of a deal, but it really is a big change.
That's so cool, man. No, I love that. It's crazy to think about how, like, technology can, I mean, even if it's not at like a goal that you had, or not a goal, kind of like the purpose of why the business kind of was started, right? It wasn't really to be a tech company, but how technology is introduced and it can really just shift culture. It's like it's so, I don't know. For me, it's just strange, even though, and we're a tech company, and it's strange for me to even think about it. It's like how companies can kind of just transform and improve as an organization when they introduce technology to improve the organization. Just really cool.
No, and it is. And I mean, we've sat through a lot of calls in the past of you get the tech call from the company that says, "Oh, we're going to, buy this. And we're going to save you $100,000 a year, or we're going to
Yeah.
save you 2 hours a day." And you go, "Oh, that's great." And you get it. And then, at the end of the year, you're like, "Well, that didn't make me $100,000. It didn't save me 2 hours a day." And, it, in our situation, like we had to make that work, because if it didn't work, we had no one to blame but ourselves, right? And then I think again it was definitely a big change.
It's interesting because you're talking about this shift for the company itself to kind of change their thinking of how to approach it from enhancing a product. If this is something that I run into pretty often, is since we're basically like on the forefront of innovation, when I'm speaking with people, I'm usually speaking with the person who's wanting to innovate at their company. It's very rare that I hear like get a call from a business owner who's like, I hate technology. Help me build this. It happens sometimes, but oftentimes it's somebody who's at an organization where they are the innovator and they're trying to basically motivate everybody within their organization. They're basically the one that has to sell it internally to get a product or a project moving forward. And I am interested, since you're basically one of those leaders at Movement for Life, from your perspective, like what would you say was the biggest cultural or leadership shift that you had to make to drive innovation at EverFlex?
I think it started when I got here. I had spent a lot of years in school tech and working with contracts with vendors and stuff like that. And when I originally got here, I felt like we had sort of an attitude of just like we had to use this. It just is what it is. It wasn't meeting our needs, and nobody was sort of pushed back. I was used to that and kind of like to do that, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, to me, as a person now who runs a product, I actually would appreciate that, because it's going to help me make my product better, right? And so the first thing that I felt like I did to help change where we were going is to let people know we had options. And sometimes those options seem insurmountable because people don't want to change. It's the change management of whatever you're using. For us, like it's an EMR system, right? We were on an EMR system, and it was a headache. And we're like, well, first question I had is, well, why don't we change EMR systems? And everyone's like, well, we can't do that. That's a big headache. And I'm like, well, how long do you keep, keep taking it? And there's at some point the balance becomes in favor of switching. You can only have so many headaches and so many roadblocks before you switch. And then so but that's hard. Change management in a big organization is a headache. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And so that was the first thing I think we had to get through, is like, we can shift, we can change. So I think that was sort of the biggest piece. And then I think the second piece was just kind of, trying to convince people that we could do it. And it is possible to build our own product of this, of this magnitude, which what you guys helped build us is a pretty large project in scope.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think a lot of people are like, well, we can't do that, and it's like, well, we can. We have the expertise in terms of what has to be done. We don't have the expertise in how to, develop the code base and all those pieces, but that's where, Imaginations came in and helped us. So it was really, kind of that, like, we can do this. We can take matters into our hands. We are big enough to do this. We've conquered other things that are bigger than this. So, why not? Why not do this? Right. And so, but I think once people started rolling on that confidence kind of jumped in. Our big part of it's our president and CEO, Kelly Sanders. And she's very careful in what she takes on, but once she takes it on, she gives this team confidence that, it can happen. And so, that's definitely a big help as well, because, definitely from a company-wide perspective, she has a ton of confidence from the employees and the people in there, which also helps. And so I think that's a big piece with her leadership as well to drive that.
Yeah,
It's kind of
was
like this
there
fearless approach, really. It's like this you're in a sense, right? Because I've seen a lot of even larger organizations where it's like when they wanna innovate in some way or another, you can almost, like, sense this fear. It's like they're so scared to start it. It's like because, yes, it can cost and all that, but you have to think that the macro, the big picture of what can happen when this is done and if it's done right and the benefits, the impact that can come from it.
No, 100%. You have to have an entrepreneurial spirit, I think, and that's something our company definitely has. Just our model and how we do things, you have to have that. You have to have that. One of our directors said in one of our early meetings, you have to have the attitude that you're okay with being the tip of the spear. When you're the tip of the spear, it's you're the one cutting through. You're not gliding through because somebody already cut through. You're the one actually doing the cutting, right? And if we want to be the tip of the spear, we're going to have greater resistance than the end of the spear.
Mm.
So those were two huge components that we really just wrapped our brain around. And just, I think once we kind of got into it, people sort of just changed their focus on what was happening. And again, I think we started with, the first couple of weeks asking for things and again, not getting a ton of feedback because people didn't quite know how to react to a lot of things. But now we get tons of feedback in a positive way, and how we can grow, and they feel like they have ownership of a product as well, which is also huge.
That's awesome. Yeah, I am curious to know for when the decision was made, because it sounds like, Kelly providing her support was a pivotal moment towards the like the organization getting the confidence to pursue this. And I'm not sure if you would describe it as like kind of like a linchpin moment, or maybe water wearing away at rock from your behalf of like, hey, we should do this, we should do this. But was there any like data driven backed like approach to, hey, this is going to make sense for us, or like any aha moments that you guys ran into where there was that shift of, we got this, we know we can do it?
I don't know if everybody would agree with me on this company wide, from a leadership perspective, but I'm going to tell you what I believe it was. Like a lot of companies, COVID was rough. We are a
Oh,
business
yeah.
where people come in and we treat them in person and often face to face kind of interactions, right? You're right there. And COVID was rough on multiple levels, just everything you can possibly imagine. No one really wants to even relive that nightmare, but
Mm.
people, our visits went way down, employee, difficulties with things like that. It was really tough, but we definitely, I think, came out of that, as tough as it was, feeling like we could handle that and really come out stronger than when we went in. We can do anything. And I think our team has that feeling anyway, to be honest with you. They're a very confident team as a whole. And this probably any apprehension we had wasn't because we couldn't do whatever it is what we want to do. It was more we didn't have the expertise in that area, right? Which again, not to sound like it's some commercial for Imaginovations, but I think that's what
No, 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 no.
helped us, right? Is because we said, all right, we don't have this expertise. Let's find a partner that has it, right? That can deliver that confidence that we had. And we went through a really thorough search for that, right? And then I think once we found that piece, we're like, all right, now we can do this. They got that part of it covered. We got this part of it covered, and then we grew it to the point where we brought more of that expertise in house as well. And so I think that was the big component, was just like, all right, we can do this. And we just came out of it. We're feeling real confident and also just, feeling like we had to take some matters into our own hands, because there just wasn't, everything was happening then. We're coming out of COVID, costs were going up, inflation in general was, so we just had
Oh, yeah.
continual
Sure.
expense encroachment, things like that. And there weren't sufficient alternatives. And so it was like, we need to do something here. And we also felt like, to your point earlier, I think, Michael, you said it, if we do this right, this will also help other practices. They're dealing with the same thing we are, but maybe don't have the resources to do, to build a product.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've all seen it too, right? That the companies that don't innovate in some way, right? I think we saw it with definitely the hospitality, like restaurant industry. They during COVID, it was brutal. Like,
Yeah.
oh man. So many of them fail because they didn't have even just simple ways to have like a way to order. And then you notice like Uber Eats and everything kind of skyrocketed, right? And their sales went up. But you know, and that's just one example. But yeah, I mean, healthcare too. It's just having like a very personalized experience, even if it's digital. That you guys found a way to kind of personalize it and be a little bit more human than just the ordinary type of technology that used to be out there. And I think that's very critical, especially with AI and everything now. There's a lot of fear with it's good. I love AI, but there's depending on how you use it as well, and just all that kind of stuff that's happening. That would be a different conversation for a different day. But
Yeah.
so lots of good, but lots of fear too around the world, and I think it's just about kind of having that human component to how you innovate and making sure that it aligns with your company values, right, and your customers on a very human level, and that's, in my opinion, that's really like it's having that balance, and that's really what's going to make you successful.
No, and that was a huge component of it. Was like I mentioned earlier, we wanted the product to feel like it was part of our culture. We wanted to feel like it was ethical with RTM when you're billing people for remote therapy monitoring, and so when they saw that item on their medical bill, that they would not go question like, well, that didn't give me any value. Why am I paying a $10 copay for that, or whatever the case may be, right? And so we want to make sure it was something that they felt like that had a lot of value for me, that was worth it. And so those are all huge component for sure.
Yeah. And I was going to say as well, just one thing I'm very interested in knowing is like, I touched on AI a little bit, like a minute or two ago, but with just the industry of healthcare, kind of patient care, physical therapy, where do you think, Andrew, things are going when it comes to like whether it's tech, policy, patient behavior, consumer behavior, even just healthcare trends on a high level? Where do you think that's going? And how is, I would say, Movement for Life and EverFlex preparing for that?
So you did hit on it. Like AI is coming at every direction possible. Some very legitimate AI, some
Hmm.
people claiming it's AI that I'm not even sure is
Yeah.
AI. They just,
Yeah.
they just throw it on the list to make sure they have it.
It's everywhere. You see it everywhere. It's just like I'm almost sick of, I'm like, it's just crazy. It's everywhere. But go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. And there's some really great stuff. If we're using a product right now that uses AI and prediction health, that is an amazing
Mm,
AI tool, just amazing. And it is literally saving, I would say, an hour to 2 hours a day of our providers' time.
wow.
We've never had a product that providers have been so excited about personally, in terms of just them saving time. And so there's some really great uses for it for sure. Right. And hats off to that company. They're doing a wonderful job in that area. But that's a huge component of it for sure. I would say that it's PT again, that there wasn't a whole lot of tech involved, and maybe gadgets. There's, I'll call them gadgets, little technology items that were in the clinic, that were used. But in terms of, like your modern day sort of, tech platforms and, software as a service type platforms, most of the AI that's being currently interjected is how do we make providers' time more efficient, right? And how do we maximize billing and or save some level of human resources somewhere, right? By automating certain tasks. There's still a lot of headaches in some of those. I'd say the most advanced stuff is that one I just mentioned in the provider's time. There is more coming out with, in the patient area. We actually use, by definition, some AI in our identify your injury tool
Okay.
that we have, that we want to expand on more in the future. But that certainly has some, there's a lot to that when you get into those particular areas. But we personally at Movement for Life and EverFlex, we don't see tech as ever replacing the human interaction part. We strongly believe that what it's going to do is enhance the provider. It's going to make their decision making better, quicker, and things like that. So we really firmly, it'll never replace like physical therapy in our world, or a physical therapist, I should say, in our world, but it will make them better. And we do think that tech-enabled PTs will replace what I'll call traditional PTs at some point, just because it's just like anything, it's going to make them better and more efficient. I talked to a doctor a while back who was working on an AI model in the general medicine area. And he said something that I thought was important, which was AI, when it comes to medical, it doesn't show up to work with any problems, right? When you're talking to a doctor, a PT, whatever, anyone diagnosing you, they're not coming in after a fight with their wife or not sleeping the night before, right? The things that
Yeah, true.
all cause all of us to make bad decisions, right? And not intentional bad decisions, just bad decisions.
Mhm.
And I look at it that way in terms of the healthcare area. What AI can do is help prevent bad decision making, right? Because it's like a double check or whatever the case may be, right? That it gives you another option. It can recognize those patterns much better than a human can. And so once it recognizes those patterns and it helps educate or inform the actual doctor, who then can also see the things that AI really can't, right? The combination of those two things is what I really believe, where I believe the value is. I think most of the people in our company would agree with that. I think those are the huge components. I also do think that there's a huge component of there's just too many people that don't have access to good medical care. I don't think that, while it's not perfect to have only technology solve those problems, that's better than nothing. And until somebody else presents a solution, in my opinion, that's better than that, it's better than nothing. And that's one of the reasons we built our tool, right? Which is, we do have patients that come in and we estimate their payment. And sometimes they go, man, my insurance only covers that much. I can't afford $100, right? Or whatever the case may be. And it's like, well, we do have a tool that we don't want to leave you empty handed, but can you afford one visit, right? Instead of 10. And if they can, we can get them set up on this tool. And as you both know, that tool is designed to actually reduce the number of visits they have to come in, and they leave with something, which is better than nothing, And
Oh, yeah, for sure.
is it as good as working with a human? I don't think it is, but it's definitely good enough in most cases, right? And so I think there is that. And then obviously it's only going to get better now over time. And humans will find better ways to use it, but that's pretty much where we see it mostly coming in right now, is just, making the jobs of providers faster, more efficient, more accurate.
Yeah.
That's probably the big piece.
That's good to know. And I think you kind of touched on one benefit that EverFlex is providing as a platform is just the availability piece. If somebody simply can't afford to set up a multi-visit program with a PT, they at least have something that can give them guidance at home. And the only other question that I have, Andrew, is now that the platform's been out for a year, what have you found from the PT practices that they are benefiting the most from when it comes to EverFlex?
Practice wise, there's a huge benefit. I mean, for us, Movement for Life, we've tracked now, we've been on it, just over a year. And it is generating approximately 300 to 320K a year for us, that we were not previously getting, in some of the remote therapy monitoring areas. And we've reduced our tech stack. We estimate about 240,000. So that's a pretty significant swing for us. I mean, if you look at that reduction in tech stack costs as, as income, because basically it is to a certain degree, it's almost a $540,000-ish gain that we have a year, which is significant in a industry that, profit margin is 5 to 10% in a good year, right? Because we're all trade time for money, right? And that's what this industry is. You're always trading time for money. And so the more efficient you can be, the better you can be. And RTM is something we've not had something like this in the past. And so that really, it really is beneficial to the patient, but it also helps a lot on that side, which I will also say, I know it wasn't exactly the question, but we have found the patients like it a lot more than we thought as well. There was a lot of question about, will patients really like this? And they do. They like being able to message their provider in between visits. They like the reminders. They like all those components. It gives them we've heard the comment, I like that I feel like I've got control over my healthcare. It's not just I show up and you give me some stuff and tell me go home and take care of this. Like, I feel like I got some control in what I do.
I love
And that
that.
makes me more invested. And I think that's a huge component.
It makes sense too, because the ailments that people are dealing with when it comes to physical therapy, it's ever present. They're dealing with the pain throughout the day, so it's always on their mind. So if the technology can keep up and provide them with additional handholding rather than you show up once every week and that's it, that's the only interaction you get, then I mean, you're able to be ever present.
100%. And that's a huge component that, again, a lot of people really, really like.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I do want to take a quick step away and at least bring up the sponsor of today's episode. So that is Magic Task. So this episode is brought to you by Magic Task. It's the only task management app we actually enjoy using. So if you think about it, most task tools feel heavy and frustrating. Magic Task is different. It's sleek, intuitive, and surprisingly fun. Whether you're managing a team or just staying on top of your own work, it keeps you focused without getting in the way. Here at Imaginovation, it's a daily part of how we run our projects. So be sure to check it out at magictask.io and see how enjoyable task management can actually be. And Andrew, thank you so much for being a part of this. You know, it's really great, I think, for people to understand, you know, the sort of innovation that they can bring to their own organization, because I think everybody's fighting that. There's people on the side of, we want to try to change how our organization approaches its technology, and there are people that are more like, let's keep status quo. So for somebody that's been able to affect the change that you have at Movement for Life, just kind of getting that sort of insight from you, I think it can help a lot of people apply it to their own situation and think about, what can I be doing to push our organization forward?
And also, Andrew, yeah, you know, just from kind of knowing you for you know, several years now, working together, and just learning more about you know, your organization and how you lead it, man. I mean, I definitely consider you an amazing leader. Just how you've worked with you know, different teams, how you are with your people, and not just innovation is just it's a piece of that, but it's kind of, I'm thinking like even deeper here. It's just how you are as a human being, and just with your business, man. It's yeah, it's awesome just knowing you and having that kind of connection, that relationship. So thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you both. And I appreciate the compliment, but I also got to compliment my team, where that's what makes it, you know, teamwork makes the dream work. And I know it
Absolutely.
sounds cliche and funny and whatever, but there is, we have an incredible culture. We have an incredible team. And to me, I'm just lucky enough to represent that team and all the stuff that, you know, ideas and concepts and things that come out of it.
That's cool. Where can everyone find, you know, kind of the you know, website? Any shout outs to the websites?
Yeah. I mean, you know, our company's Movement for Life, which is just movementforlife.com, but EverFlex can be found at geteverflex.com. So just by all means, check it out. And we're real excited where it's at, and even have some fun little things in the hopper that might expand where we're going based on some connections we made over the last couple of years. And so we're excited to see where that kind of goes as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it, man. And yeah, thanks again for being on this episode, kind of just sharing your story and your experience, and really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. I think people are going to really love this. So thanks again.
All right. Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Tales from the Pros. And until next time, this is Michael Georgiou, Eric Lawrence, and our guest, Andrew Cherry. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Please subscribe to our YouTube page and also follow our social media. There are links somewhere around here. But we really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for all the support. And I'm going to be giving you awesome content continuously. And we look forward to seeing you soon.